So today is the 2nd of January 2016. A very happy New Year to you, Father Lancy.
Thank you.
I've really been enjoying these conversations with you, and it's kind of appropriate that we begin this new year with the idea of a guru. One of the lighthouses categories in your blog. And you have listed 3 people who you look to as guru material, and for 3 different areas of lighthouse shining, so to speak. So let's begin with, the broad thing I read on the blog was, for you a guru is someone who takes you to the other shore, from this shore to the other shore. And you made an interesting point there that even though some of us may not be prepared to hear what they have to say, that's what a guru really does. So when we talk about gurus and Sadhguru specifically, if you could talk about why are we not prepared to hear sometimes? You have also mentioned we need to have an open heart and a clear mind, and the two need to be working together in order to really receive the best from a guru. And you've talked about the love in the heart, the love of the heart, that kind of non-dual center. So maybe let's take off from there. Anything more on the idea of gurus as lighthouses and your connection with the idea of a guru? And maybe from there you can lead into Sadhguru on, your connection with Sadhguru.
Okay. These people whom you mentioned specifically are specifically the kind of people who I personally relate to very strongly as gurus, because there's nothing too fixed about them. And if you look at their own lives, let's take for instance, who was the one you mentioned?
Okay. Jack Kornfield?
Jack Kornfield, okay. Jack Kornfield now is somebody who worked in a certain tradition in Sri Lanka and so on, as a Buddhist, and came back, and Jack Kornfield realized that he didn't really know people as they were. So he then decided really to give up his own tradition and get involved with the world. He got married. He then began to explore reality and guruship and so on from the point of view of people actually living a life in the world. And he changed completely the whole approach by which Buddhists, who are supposed to have no self of their own, would be able to relate to the world as it is. So he was ready to make many changes within himself. That's one of the kind of gurus I like. Then if you take Sadhguru, this is an obvious thing of anybody who is with his disciples. He is one of the most authentic people you can find, and he's all the time exploring what it is that is going on inside us, and what it is that is coming from our mind and so on, and what it is on the other hand which is part of basic reality. And he even goes to the extent of pointing out how within his own system he sometimes has to give to ordinary people a certain framework in order that they may apply his own principles. But he points out that anybody is open to come into that system as long as they are ready to go through the training. Okay. And the other one you mentioned was?
James Carse.
James Carse. Now James Carse is one of the most interesting of the lot, because he's a professor in New York University. And he has a book called Breakfast at the Victory. The Victory is a place where you used to go for a breakfast in the morning. And if there is any example I know of what I would call mysticism in the raw, it is James Carse. Talk to everybody there. His basic idea is that really all of us have to be mystics. What is it to be a mystic? Is to see the whole, to see all parts of reality and not start off by saying, it should be like this, it should be like that, it should be like the other thing and so on. And when it's over, it's over. In other words, the place where he was going to have breakfast finally broke down and so on. Then he speaks about his class and how people, while he was running the class, if he looked over their shoulder, were making all sorts of acid comments about the class itself. I mean, using quite language close to bullshit and waste of time and this and that and so on and so forth. Yet he was one of the most respected professors there in the university. Classes were very strongly attended and so on. Once again, a man who immersed himself tremendously in reality and was a guru to lots of people precisely because he refused to be a fixed kind of guru. When we say they bring us to the other shore, it is that they give us an awareness that there is another shore, and maybe we are already on that other shore here now. At least that's what I have to say about these.
You have chosen three very different individuals. Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev is a guru in the traditional Indian sense. He has a following and he gives initiation. Jack Kornfield is an author, right? And James Carse is a professor. Three very different ways to be gurus in the world. And yet the name guru has been given a bad name in recent times because it's also got to do with power. If someone can take you across to the other side, somehow that person has power you don't have, and then you are willing to put yourself in their hands, trusting. Anything you wish to say about the responsibility of being a guru?
It's not that they take you to the other side. They give you an awareness of the other side. And what is much more important, they make it clear that the other side is already here. And it is your way of dealing with this side that makes the other side available to you right here. In other words, I have no better example of this than going through those Zen pictures, the ox pictures of the chap saying, when I first started Zen, mountains were mountains and so on. Then I realized they were not mountains, etc. And finally came back and said, yes, they are mountains. In the ox pictures, the same thing happens. He finally comes back to the marketplace and says, this is it. This is how life should be. We are, for whatever reason, unwilling to accept that heaven is already here and we are living it. If only we knew.
What makes a person a guru versus, someone who is a writer of important ideas or an artist who are also lighthouses according to you? What's unique about gurus?
I think what is unique about gurus is that you trust them. You trust them to teach you something, You trust them to show you the way. You trust them to be the light in the lighthouse. And I think therefore a lot depends on you. You will choose as gurus those people who help you more than ever to understand yourself and to be yourself. Hmm?
That is very spot on. You trust them, and they are the light in the lighthouse. And that is really up to us to find our guru. And there are many out there. Is there a particular guru for a particular kind of person in your experience?
I would have to identify who that particular kind of person is. I think I can't give a general answer to that.
Why would Sadhguru be your guru?
Oh, Sadhguru would be my guru for 100 reasons, because I think of him, in fact, being an Indian, as being quintessentially Indian. And also, I enjoy the fact that he drives fast cars. And that, he is... that, for instance, the way the creative way in which he looks at everything. I mean, if he designs a temple, for instance, he designs it with a specific idea in mind, He might want, for instance, to make the feminine principle particularly evident in that temple. He'll go ahead and do it. And I find him, his thought stretches, from the very worldly to the very highly spiritual. He seems to transcend and pass easily to the various planes of existence as if they were all the same thing. And they are. They are the same thing.
Which is why you have used him as an example or an exemplar on the theme of wholeness.
Yes, because wholeness is what you find right at the end of the Vedas, how does it go? Something. Yes, exactly. You take away from the whole and the whole still remains. Which is again for me a quintessential image of God. There's nothing you can add or subtract, it's everything. And if there's one thing which I'm trying to convey in everything I've done and written is that if we do not know this God and what this God is thinking, how can we know anything?
That's a huge ask.
I'm sorry.
No, so it's one thing if we don't have the faculties and the capacities to comprehend wholeness and God. I'm intrigued that you also say some of us are not prepared to hear. What do you mean?
By this I mean we are conditioned. We have an idea that we have fixed ideas about ourselves. I can only go so far and no further. But I think we are infinite creatures. Infinite. I mean, there's no limit to us. And anybody who experiences that and the joy of it, and the thrill of it and the challenge of it, I think is a very lucky person.
Some words came to me the other day, we can't, we don't not because we won't, but because we can't.
You believe that?
It came to me, and I realized when I see people around me who seem stuck for whatever reason, I may have judged them in the past as not wanting to change, and then the penny dropped that perhaps they can't. They don't have the capacity or the receptor sites or whatever it is. If they could, they would. Do you sense that?
Yes, I sense that, but I also sense that all I need to do when I am faced with such a person is not to judge them, but to encourage them. Because the block may come from something which started in childhood, from parents, from whatever reason, whatever experiences they had. So I just keep encouraging them, to see that why it is there may be a block. But I do not believe that any person is incapable of transcending his or her own difficulties.
And that's why in the Indian tradition, the idea of a guru is considered almost indispensable.
That's a very, 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 very interesting insight, because it relates to the idea that people think they cannot manage without that guru. And then they go to satsangs and all this kind of thing constantly, And, humankind cannot bear overmuch reality.
So what would be the truth in that statement? That the presence of the guru is indispensable to reach the other shore of awakening. Is there any truth in that statement, and in what way would it be a true statement?
I don't know. I mean, you have to take each case individually and see. I think the most important thing is to encourage, not to judge. To realize that a person has infinite capacity, that the block may not be his or her own fault. And you will notice, and this is a very important thing for me, that if you look back over your life, who are the people who have had an influence on you? It's not precisely the people who have been gurus and so on, but the people who have listened, have tried to encourage you to be your best self. And that's it. Sometimes we pay through the nose to meet such people. But those are the people that make life worthwhile.
Yes, and sometimes you don't even ever meet a person, but it's through their teachings that you feel such a strong resonance that you may have read or just heard them say. You just have a sense that this is a guru for me. There's something deeply personal about that guru connection.
Say, for instance, if there is one thing which has been more important to me than all the gurus I've met in prayers and so on, is standing on one of these cruise ships, in the middle of the ocean, and feeling completely one with the whole universe, and finding fish on this side or that side. I mean, at that point I could do anything, or be anything. You will notice there that the guru in that case is that whole experience. And not many people have been granted that kind of experience which I had. And it sometimes happens with music. That's why I've in this portion of the blog since I've written about music. Gosh, I mean, music can do things to you which nothing else can. In telling you who you are.
I'm picking up on this idea of the experience as the guru. It is in the Indian tradition, for example, the yogic tradition, the guru is also someone who gives you initiation. There is a power to, there's some kind of a transmission. There is some which is called an initiation, and certain crucible moments in our life can serve as diksha, serve as initiatory experiences. And you're describing music as having the ability to do that in your case. So the idea of initiation through either an experience or the guru who gives you that experience, it seems to be one and the same thing?
Could be. Depends on the person. I mean, if you are saying that we cannot reach our best selves without an initiation, then I don't agree with you. But if you are saying that sometimes we need that initiation to be our best selves, I agree with you.
So an experience like a crucible moment, like a huge, like a moment of great beauty, which is what you had on the ocean, or when you listen to music. The crucible moment can both be one that opens you to something grander than the ordinary, gives you a glimpse of that. Sometimes it can also be the opposite, a deeply traumatic event, which also breaks you out of your ordinary.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And it's perhaps in those cases where a personal guru comes in and is very
good,
very useful.
Yes, oh yes. Yes. Very much so. I think that's very realistic, that's very practical, that is on, yeah.
So moving to Jack Kornfield, anything that struck you in his work, especially on balanced egoism? Why do you think he's an exemplar on the theme of balanced egoism?
Well, you know, there's nobody like Jack Kornfield to point out that in his work, you know, especially on sexuality amongst gurus, you know, his basic thing is that we have got to keep a real hold on the fact that birds do it, you know, bees do it, gurus do it, like, you know. So it's fine. Now the question at issue is whether his work as a guru affects the disciples, you know, that behavior affects the disciples. And there is no one in the whole history of literature which I have read, which is not everything, who has given you norms of how one can handle that, of how professionally the others can talk to this person and say, listen, these are the norms you should follow if you want to continue to be regarded as a guru by us. There is nobody who has done this before. And I think one needed to be married to be in touch with all kinds of gurus, and the way we you know, pull the wool over our eyes or that of our disciples, as Jack Kornfield. Excellent, excellent, excellent. No holds barred, Practical norms for how we can handle our sexuality.
So that's a kind of grounded,
Oh, yes.
very grounded spiritual person.
Yes, exactly. He's amongst the most grounded people I have ever encountered.
And therefore you also quote him on the theme of grounded flexibility.
Yes.
Can you say more on that?
Yes, this again is how many people, for instance, behave this way? That's what I consider flexibility, He is very grounded, obviously, but he's flexible enough to see things which other people don't see. In other words, this is a problem that has to be faced. It has happened in gurus all down the centuries and still continues to happen. How do we face it? So if you notice, therefore, I come back to your own formulation, which is beautiful, of being the light in the lighthouses, These kind of people, are, whether you look at it from the point of view of egoism or flexibility or whatever it be.
Wholeness.
These kind of people are people who are free inside and adjust accordingly.
Interesting. So that light in the lighthouse comes from an inherent freedom of being. Which we trust.
Yes. Oh, there are so many aspects of this which can be. It's like the whole thing of love, which is so misunderstood. Love is something that it's really a thrust towards it's not a feeling at all. It's something in which you just throw yourself into seeing the other person and yourself in all the possibilities, that one is capable of.
So interestingly that, you brought up the subject of love as a very kind of essential piece of this freedom and this inner freedom and unattachment to anything. You mentioned James Carse as the exemplar on universal love and compassion.
Yes.
Where did that connection for you come from in his work? Any example in what you read in his work, or what about him represents this for you?
Yeah, what represented this for me was that James Carse describes in his book, for instance, his love affairs, and how he fell in love with his wife, and how she died, how he related to her death, how he missed her, and at the same time went on, It's incredible. It's the incredibility comes from the fact that you are all the time flexible, moving with life as it comes, making the best of it, You can see that the strong sexual overtones all through his thing, and then his wife, before she died, told him, I feel nothing. No damn thing, she said to him. It was good, it's over. Period. And all this he speaks as if he's drinking a cup of tea. Marvelous. Just marvelous.
She says, I felt nothing at the prospect of death, or...
Yes. Yes. She said, I'm going, I'm not going, I'm missing this or that. She said, no, I think the actual word she uses, no damned thing. Nothing. And then I think he says she smiled, not knowing how her words would be accepted or not. Beautiful.
So the idea of universal love and compassion, it's almost as if it's a very impersonal. It's not personal. It's not about this one person that I feel this feeling. I feel this feeling anyway.
Yeah.
And yet we come to these abilities to feel that kind of love through some kind of a personal love. Is that what you're saying in his relationships?
His meaning?
James Carse.
No, I took the position of man who has savored life completely, I think universal compassion really is a concept which has something to do with not excluding anybody rather than including everyone. By not excluding anybody, you do include everyone. So he does explain, for instance, once the attitude of his mother when coming for one of his lectures, Or he explains in one of his books, Finite Games and Infinite Games. He explains there that nature is like a myth, It's just, you have to take things as they are. And it can surprise you, For instance, he could speak very freely without getting religious in any way. About the myth of Jesus. Okay. In what way is Jesus a myth? How does that myth help you to be a realistic person? You know what you are going around and around, I think, Nilima, is that many of these things intersect, They have cross relationships.
Completely.
There are different ways of looking at the same thing.
So when stay with the myth of Jesus, that to me felt like there would be a window into understanding universal love and compassion through the myth of Jesus that James Carse seems to be pointing us to. So I don't know it. Can you share that?
Well, what he's saying is that we cannot live without myths. That myth is at the bottom of everything we do. And at some previous interview, you had come out with this very good thing about how somebody like, who was the earliest chap who talked about myths? Joseph Campbell. That he was a pioneer in this. And then this led later on to several things, and that is the myths in the successful movies, etc., etc. And you come then to the idea of, then there are people who you are aware of, who use this idea of the hero's journey or the heroine's journey and applied it to their own lives and so on and so forth. So we cannot live without myths. Myth is what at the end tells us who we are.
And tell me about the myth of Jesus. I'm keen. I've never heard you describe that. So,
Yes, I think the myth of Jesus, what happens in this particular thing is that Jesus is a figure who is very different for different Christians.
yes.
That's where the myth element comes in. Who is the real Jesus? We don't really know. We know, for instance, that he changed his whole attitude towards women and towards the non-Jewish through his encounter with one woman who insisted that she could at least eat the crumbs from the table which fell from the masters. He actually changed all that picture. So, who is Jesus? And in fact, when you come to that thing where on the cross, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? At that point, even it seemed as if his own father had forsaken him. Now, what happens with a Christian, that has happened with me, is I keep going deeper and deeper into this meaning of the myth. For me personally, for my life, what does it mean for me that at the times in my life when I say, even God seems to have forsaken me? What must it have felt like to experience that you're going to have nails put in at the worst points, as you can see from the Shroud of Turin? The Shroud of Turin is supposed to be a shroud which represents the burial cloth of Jesus and so on. Again, depending on the myth you have, you would consider this as real or not real. There's scientific reasons for this and all kinds of radio dating and all this. I don't think that a really well-formed person has an attitude to reality in which there's a big dose of myth.
It's interesting that you brought up the myth of Jesus in this conversation today on gurus, and gurus on the themes of, among other things, universal love and compassion. How do you see James Carse connecting with the myth of Jesus?
If you read James Carse, you have no idea whether he is a Christian or not a Christian or anything at all. As I say, his idea of universal love and compassion, or of myths and so on, is of not excluding anybody. It's I think, it's very different from, let's say, the myth which dominates many marriages. Like, I don't marry the person who I cannot but live with. I marry the person whom I cannot live without. I can't live without this person. Therefore, I marry this person. Now, that is a myth which can cement a marriage. It can also break it up.
Yes.
So
It can break it up, I would say, more than it would cement it.
I think it's also very true. That's very true, because sometimes when the myth fades, in the light of reality, you begin to say, hey, was this what I wanted?
That's an interesting point. I want to go deeper.
Go ahead.
The myth, how is the myth related to reality and in the idea of marriage?
I don't know whether this can be handled theoretically. I think I can look at an individual marriage if somebody comes to me, and from the body language and from what they are saying on related history, I can say something about it. But I don't think I can make something, a theoretical framework which will fit everybody's idea of this.
So let me try. I think perhaps what you're saying, I'm paraphrasing,
Yes.
reading many lines in between your lines. You're saying the myth of love, of having found the one in marriage, can sustain the relationship, and just the power of that myth can provide the love needed to deal with the reality.
Yes. It can. It can also do the opposite.
No, the myth has a power which is archetypal, it's transcendental almost. So, the myth of love provides enough power and fuel to deal with the reality.
Yes, of course. Yes, very much so. I'm only saying I can't make a general theory of it which applies to all cases.
What do they have in common? Sadhguru, Jack Kornfield and James Carse.
I think
What correlations exist between them?
is, I think, their openness to the wholeness of reality. Their fearlessness in facing things as they come. Their ability to deal with anything that comes up and make it part of their experience. Their lack of fear, their creativity in seeing who they are and applying it to a new problem in a new way, without fear that they would be understood or misunderstood or appreciated or not appreciated. These three chaps whom you mentioned are all in that category.
It's interesting we talked on the theme of love because my experience of the Guru is there's also a very personal sense of love towards the Guru. It's a deep relationship. It's a relationship. You just don't receive the wisdom they have. You actually feel the love they have.
Yeah, I think at least I know of no normal human being who's not sick in some way, who cannot be profoundly grateful for being loved or for feeling love. I mean, that's a beautiful kind of experience. It's like I find it very much on the sensual level of like being in a warm bubble bath, and just being immersed in something in which all your senses and so on are filled. And it's like it's nothing in particular, but it's at the same time everything. It's all enveloping.
Yes, to close this, it's almost, I'm getting this realization now through this interview as we are closing, that one goes to a guru for knowledge and wisdom, but really what one gets is this profound love.
Beautiful. Beautiful, yes. Understanding love in the way we are saying that, not this kind of feeling of, this gooey feeling, but this feeling of being valued for oneself exactly as one is, with nothing excluded. Yes, yes, very much so.
Wonderful. So on that note, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for bringing out so much which was inside me without my knowing it.